It is 7:32 on Monday, January 13th. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the RTM Education Committee to order. I'm Liza Lucas, I'm the chair. And I know our first order of business is to approve minutes from December 16th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
There needs to be a change.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
discuss first.
Oh, I got the name. I know who you both are, but I put Janet incorrectly in one of the lines, so thank you. So I need to, I put Janet is attending. This one was not. Oh, I mistook. Yeah.
What you said, she said, Janet said.
Oh.
Yes, so I'm horrified at that. I promise I know who you both are, and I will change that in the
It's
minutes.
okay.
You didn't notice?
I didn't.
Didn't read the minutes, then.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Are we being recorded right now?
Yes, I think we're good. So I guess let's have a motion to approve the amended minutes
Yes.
to reflect
I need to change.
Jan Raymond and Janet Fitzpatrick.
Fitzsimmons.
You don't have to get into the last name.
Okay, yeah, switch, I'm sorry, I didn't even articulate that well, because I'm
I
so
don't think
ashamed.
it's
I need
amended,
to
it's
switch
corrected.
Janet and
Corrected.
Janet. in the
Yes,
meeting
correct,
minutes.
it's not amended.
Yes.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion so we can approve the minutes? Okay, Anne and Janet, second. All in favor of approving the minutes? All right, thanks. Before we get started, let's have I know we all introduced ourselves, but let's go around the table one more time and introduce ourselves as we do have a new member. And let's start with Dan, if that's okay.
What would you like to know?
Just your name, where you're from, and maybe just, what interested you in the committee.
Sure. Dan Coonan. I live on Casement Street, District 4. I have 3 kids in the school system, 1 in high school, 2 at Henley, 1's gone through middle school. Through ELP, I've had basically access to all of the schools in the town at this point. So I've invested in
Awesome.
education in this town.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great, welcome. Welcome.
I think you have that in common with everybody on this committee. Curtis Butler, I have 2 girls in high school. I've been in the RTM now more than 10 years, and I'm the education committee for 4 or 5. But nice to meet you.
And I'm Jan Raymond, and I've been on the RTM for, I don't know, now 6 years, I think. I was on the Board of Education for 6 years, a long time ago, and I've been involved in education in a lot of ways. And I'm a graduate of Henley.
Great.
And DHS.
And DHS, yes, with Janet.
Well, I'm not lucky enough to graduate from DHS, but I have 2 boys. One is trying to graduate next year, and one is in Middlesex.
Right.
And also the rest of you don't really check that.
I'm Karen McNichol. My twins graduated from the high school here. The older one, we were in Australia at the time. But anyway, I'm English, but if you didn't know, I've been a member of the RTM for about 6 years or so, and on the Education Committee.
I lived in England for 6 months once and 10 years once.
Oh, wow.
What did you do?
And
I lived in England for a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
Very cool.
My name is Janet, and I have been on the RTM for many, many years, and I graduated from DHS, and so did my children. And I've been on this committee for a while.
I'm Ann King, and I have 2 girls that went through the school system in Darien, and I've been on the education committee for going into my 2nd year.
Liza Lucas, I have 5 kids in the school district, and I've been on this committee for 6 years.
Mary Ellen Gauthier. I have 2 children at Tokenique Elementary, and it's my first year on the committee, but I believe my 4th year on the RTM. And super excited.
Nice to meet you.
Could I ask everybody to speak up, because I'm having a hard time here.
Absolutely.
Sure. Oh.
The camera might have a hard time hearing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. I
Being
think
loud is
that's a
not
good
helpful.
reminder. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Okay. Obviously we're here primarily tonight to discuss the proposed budget. And I think the most natural way to do that is just to go around the room, make sure everyone has a chance to speak on the issues that they want to discuss. And if someone mentions a topic, for example, idea, I know it's going to come up, we can discuss that fully and then move on to the next person, if that sounds good. And if anyone would like to start us off, that would be great. If anyone has any topics they want to jump into.
Why don't we start with idea?
Great, great, okay.
Seems to be, yeah, and as I started to say, I just talked to somebody today who's moving their kids out of the district
Yeah.
because idea is leaving, or they want idea to leave.
Are they, do you know if they mentioned if they were leaving for a public school with a gifted program or to a private school? Just curious.
I'm not sure what they're doing.
Okay.
I didn't get that far,
Is it
just,
definitely being pulled, or is it still
There's-
proposed?
It's proposed.
Proposed.
The change is proposed, and I'm gonna wait to give, like, I think my comments until I see the meeting tomorrow, because I did
Yeah.
see that, the materials for tomorrow's Board of Education meeting had quite a bit of information about ideas, on how to change the program, so like, I think again, I don't wanna get deeply into it until I hear their presentation, but I think there was an idea that they already discussed about, taking the program sort of away and just allowing the classroom teachers, again, I know I'm paraphrasing, but to be in charge of steering those kids in the classroom. And then a sort of newer idea was to have the school librarians become the head of like teaching and pull out kids to the library to do the idea portion. Again, I am not the person I want to see the presentation tomorrow and read it in detail, so please take that for a grain of salt, but I know that they're still working on how to change it, if they're going to change it.
I think one of the things that concerns me about the proposal, as they were talking about it in the presentation, what was it, last Saturday? That we were there all day? They were talking about training teachers in the classroom to be able to diversify the education according to the kids' needs. That's a project that I know has been undertaken more than one time in the district. I don't know how successful. I do know it wasn't successful once. I'm hoping that people know a lot more now, and I would like to hear more about what that means. We're going to have the teachers upgrade or trained to be able to diversify the curriculum more within the classroom. I'm sure there are teachers that can do that readily, and I'm sure there are teachers would find that differentiation to be more difficult to institute in the classrooms. And I would like to hear more from the Board of Ed about what that plan is and what it looks like. Because just saying it won't make it happen. And I think there are a lot of people, I think I speak for more than myself.
Yes, agreed.
I agree.
I would add, again, the presentation was from the school administration, right? It was their proposal, their proposed cut. I did find, and I shared this with the Board of Ed, I did find their alternative solutions that you were suggesting not to have very much substance, very vague, and just taking something formal and successful, in my opinion, and making it completely unstructured, informal, and who knows what would happen. It seemed more just, well, we'll still do something. But I would,
Yeah.
to the very least, I would say I was disappointed with both, with their suggestion that it should be cut and what they were planning to replace it with.
I'm gonna go to Peter next and then Dan.
Yeah, they mentioned differentiated practices, so curriculum extensions, it was kind of like, I agree, but I think maybe perhaps I can offer my view on the whole budget process, the way I think about it and how I frame what's in front of us, right? Because we're deciding about $125 million budget, not only $439,000 for IDEA program.
I thought we were going to go about an idea program first. Isn't that?
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, so IDEA, yeah, I think it's a step back as well. I think, the way I think about it is impact on student learning, impact on taxpayer, and then efficiencies. And impact on student learning is clearly hindered by cutting IDEA. I don't think solutions that are proposed are substantive enough. So yeah, I mean, I don't have more to add. I mean, there's going to be more discussion about it. So that's my view on IDEA.
What was the amount you were just about to say?
I think it's $439,000 for 323 FTEs.
3.5 employees.
So not an awful lot of the overall budget.
Yeah, 0.4%.
Yeah.
Dan, did you want to?
Yeah, and as somebody new, I don't have all of the information, but just my initial reaction when watching the meeting was, when you set out a budget, it's based on the strategy and your direction and your strategies around choices. And whether the IDEA program happens or not seems like a very binary choice. But what are the other choices for cutting versus the IDEA program? It's like we're not flipping a switch on and off for the IDEA program. It's if you're going to maintain that, then the money needs to come from somewhere else, which goes back to your point around the overall budget. But it's like making a decision in isolation from the rest of the budget. It's not enough there to say if that's more valuable than something else.
And that made me wonder as well, why was it even a target? How did it come up as something worth cutting?
Well, Tom, I think, sort of step back, right? How did we get there, right? The superintendent proposed on November 22nd, 7.1% increase in his budget. That's what he should, right? He has ideas, there's some 6% in core spending, and there's 1.1% that he wanted to do something more. It had still paraprofessionals in it, it's still IDEA, it had initiatives. Well, Board of Education came back next week and told him, bring us back the same budget you brought us last year, which is 4.6%. So he had a month to come up with something that, in his judgment, was least detrimental to the success of the school system. I think some discussion the other Saturday was disappointing when people said you lost your way, etc. He didn't. He suggested a great budget, 7.1%, except that it's more than the community is willing to pay, apparently. So, it's a judgment, it's a discussion, it's something that obviously we're discussing here, but it's really up to Board of Education to come up with that. I think we're all voicing a similar issue. I think, student success translates into time in classroom and quality of teachers, right? These two things are kind of sort of correlated with the student outcomes, and obviously this goes against it. This goes against the time in classroom is going down because of that, right? At least the quality time with your peers and stuff. So, but I don't think it was a binary choice. It was a judgment call. Obviously, I heard 50 public comment. Nobody is for it. But again, we're at with it, we're over 5%, right? What does 5% mean? 5% increase in budget means 7% increase in our taxes. We represent taxpayers. Will you come in front of your neighbor? 60% of our neighbors do not have kids in the school system, right? Although their property values are related to quality of the school system, so it's also in the binary. But the reality is, I don't want to go in front of my neighbor saying I'm raising my hand for 7% increase in taxes. Now, we do have, and I'm jumping away from IDEA, so stop me if others are talking about it, right? Maybe others want to finish IDEA, but luckily we have 30 million in general fund, which is over taxation of our past 30, 40 years, whatever it is, of which we need 20, according to Moody's, according to our general guidelines. So we have 10 million extra. So I think the intention of the Board of Finance is to use at least 2 million, which would translate, and they create a nice little chart saying how much, what would really mean for taxation. And if right now the budget is 4.4%, if we do that and they use 2 million, we still have close to 6% increase in taxes. It's not nothing, right? It's expensive to run the system, and we can talk about efficiencies and suggestions that we have, and suggestions the Board of Education should look at. But the impact on taxpayers is meaningful. Every year increasing 6-7% is not nothing. I mean, the way I think about tax burden is it should not grow more than the wealth of the community. Well, how much the community has grown? I mean, median and average household in this community last year was 3%, right? Fairfield County was 4 to 7%. Inflation 3%, right? New York City income, New York City wages, which are correlated because this is a commuter town, in fact, right? It's plus 3%. So somewhere between 3 and 5%, maybe the wealth has grown here, but
You can't forget real estate. Let's not forget that. That's grown dramatically, right? The value of the real estate has grown dramatically.
The value of the real estate, I'm sorry?
Has grown dramatically.
Has grown, last year 3%. Generally, yes, has grown more, right? But if you look at long-term, 3-4%, has it grown over 5%? Probably not compounded, right? So raising your taxes more than 5% means we're gonna pay more of our wealth to taxation. Maybe that's what we want as a community. Maybe we wanna have the best school system. We are close to it, as we do, but.
You make a really good point about the 6% versus the guidance. And we've talked about this before, you raised this before. How much of the education budget is actually fixed? And how small the discretionary portion actually is, right? We fixed ourselves with these labor contracts, right? There's nothing we can do about that now. So we have to make up for it, unfortunately, on the discretionary side. But also caution, putting too much pressure, emphasis, I stated this last year as well, blaming the education budget for tax increases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have an entire budget for this town that is not just the education budget. We made lots of very expensive decisions in this town that have contributed to any kind of tax increase we might see. So to place all the blame and to put the pressure on the Board of Education that it's all their fault if there's a tax increase, I think is mistaken and misleading.
100%. And I'm saying that 5% increase in education budget leads to 7% increase in taxes because of the things that you mentioned. Our debt went from 60 million to 230 million. Interest rates were going up. But interest rates are actually falling, we have less interest income, right? So clearly, you know, it's not just, but even 5% is probably, right? I
It's a
mean,
not sustainable rate.
you know. Now, the thing is, as you mentioned, the discretionary, as I call it, shaving around the corners, right? We're taking one healthcare professional out. We're taking one security officer out. It's not gonna fix it. If you look at, there is a tab here, which is the next 5 years, how it's gonna look. Next year, we're proposing 4.6, next year is 5.2, and there is not much new initiatives, you know? We're doing much more for our kids than is required by law. I'm proud of it, I'm happy with it, but I think there's a couple of big buckets that we need to look at as a community, or a Board of Education needs to look at, but we eventually approve it, whether it's something that we wanna continue in the current state, right? The big things that I see is, you know, Dr. Adler talked about the infrastructure that he put together, right? Of the administration, of the superintendents, of the directors. We have 800 people in the system that we pay. 315 is general education, 220 is special education, and then there's a lot of other people. They are all great professionals, but this is not a cheap system to run, right? You know, I said, I mean, for me, schooling, the time at school and the quality of teacher is critical, and there is something great in this budget that they're trying to do, teachers development. I really support all these things, and it's not that it's such an expensive initiative. But you know, it's there is things like teams, and I know Dr. McAdams mentioned, please don't bring teams, we don't want to complicate things, you know, it's work. This Dr. Adler said this is an expensive way to run the system. I have example of 2 kids, so it's not much, and I've been probing them last couple of days, what do you think about teams, you know, is it important to experience, and both of them are like, no big deal.
But they don't know the opposite.
They don't know the opposite. Dr. Adler says it's cheaper. We should at least put it on table. I'm not saying this school
They
year.
did last year.
Teams,
Yeah, they did discuss the team.
partially, but we still have teams, right?
Yeah, they made the decision last year that we were going to continue with the
Right.
team system.
Right.
So-
Well, now we may not have money for it, so I said everything needs to be discussed, right? This is one of these things.
Middlesex teams.
Yeah, how they do
Okay,
that, how they
we're on
vote, yeah.
sports for a minute.
The way that they structure the teaching at the
Yeah.
middle school, the teams there.
But that's just one, right? I think the next big bucket is special education. Special education is growing less than 1% in folks in it. It's growing 9% in budget terms, and 15% if out of tuition, out of district tuition, right? Listen, I know parents would prefer to have the kids in district, right? But there are some investments we you know, and that was mentioned there by Mrs. Loughlin, I think, which was wonderful. It's like, let's see how much we can insource. It's not gonna happen overnight, but it's something that can be sold to the Board of Finance as an investment, right? Do we have to send all these kids to all these schools? Some we do, and I know we have Fitch, maybe we expand Fitch, but these are, you know, the special education we have, and that's really one of the questions, and I guess the outcome of this discussion should be questions that we send to you, I assume, at some point.
I spoke with Jill this morning briefly, and because I don't know if you noticed in the superintendent's budget presentation, there's like a meeting noted for like January 17th.
17.
Yeah, and so I was, you know, going through just getting organized, and I thought, you know, I don't have a date or I thought, you know, and so I think what that date really is a date by which they want to have
Right.
our feedback. And I think they would prefer sort of a higher level feedback where we tell them, you know, the discussion we're having right now. Obviously, if we have very specific questions, what's this line item, how did we get this number, you know, that we can include it also. So I think the whole purpose of this discussion is to give them our, you know, our honest feedback about all the different, you know, cuts and, you know, I mean, additions, there's a few, you know, to the budget, so, yeah.
So my fundamental question is, and I listened to the presentation on special education that Dr. Klein, or Ms. Klein presented in November, and it's a wonderful professionals, we have these folks, but we have 21% of our kids, and I've said it in this committee before, that are part with it, that have individualized education program, special ed. New Canaan has 14.
It's a huge percentage.
Our DIRC has 16. New Canaan, if you look at the presentation by Dr. Adley, in fact spends about $5 million less in their budget if they had the same amount of kids. I bet that most of it is this difference, right?
Yeah.
That we have 7% more in special ed, and we should be proud of it maybe, right? But I just think that these folks, they have probably the toughest job in the school district, right? You have 1,000 parents who come in, often they come with a lawyer, and they're making their case that the kid needs to be placed at certain schools, and you know, and it's valid, I get it, but these numbers are huge. We're crowding out general education with these services. Not all of them are legal, are required by law. That's my view at least, and I don't know that.
How do you?
I don't know that, but I think, I look at these numbers, and that's one of my big questions. Why do we spend 7% more of our kids? Maybe we have other services that they don't count in special ed. I don't know, but I didn't get the answer in the presentation that I had in November, and that's one of my biggest questions. I'm just looking at the big buckets where we can make some savings to make a reason to make budget that fits within the town's sort of, you know, population expectation, not to exceed 5%, right? So.
And this has been a strategic challenge for the district ever since we moved here in 2013. You may recall there was a big issue with special education before that, kind of created a firestorm. And there was a lot of discussion at that time, to what extent should we start insourcing these resources? To what extent can we save money by having more in-district? And that's 12 years ago.
Yeah.
The conversation's been in the background the entire time, but it's a really challenging one.
It's challenging.
And just as someone, not the only one in this committee, but someone who's very close to it, finding the personnel is proving to be incredibly
Yes.
challenging. Not only, obviously it's challenging to find teachers at all nowadays, but trying to find specialists in this area is really, really difficult. And I think that's probably part of the reason so much of this is outsourced.
And I think that,
Yeah.
I think we also have to realize, no one wants to have their child in a special ed program. This is not something that parents are pushing for. And there are parents who push against having their kids in special ed as well. But I think we have to look at the legal requirements and what we can do what we can insource or not outsource. But I think it's a changing demographic as well. In addition, we also have some of the kids that are dually enrolled in both the gifted program and the learning disabilities program.
It's hard, I'm not saying it's easy. And I don't want to go to anecdotal, but I was unfortunately privy to a discussion with a parent who has a kid in one of those outplacements that are paid by Darien taxpayers who spent a semester at sea.
What?
Who spent a semester at sea in one of these schools, right? And you know, it didn't do well that I knew that this is happening. So that's anecdotal. It's not, I'm sure it's 1 out of the 1,000, but it's still
I'm sorry, it's
a third part.
Either way, we want to be careful in these open sessions to start
Correct.
getting specific about
I'm not
individuals.
talking about names, right? But this is what I was present at, right? So I think we need to look at it. Board of Education look at it. I don't know if they need an outside person to look at it because it's difficult. It's very hard conversation. It's emotional. It's legal. But it's 31 million. It's 25% of our budget. You know, these tuitions are growing, you know, tremendously. In fact, we're getting 2 million back for kids who spend more than 122,000 a year in tuition. State says this is too much. We're going to pay you back, right? As the excess cost that you send us before of that the thing. So anyway, and Janet, I agree with you. But parents would prefer to have it, and maybe we don't offer it. So it's not easy, right? So that's one bucket. And then the whole thing, for me, looking at big numbers, because again, it's not going to be one person here, one person there. Sustainable long-term is the curriculum. You know, we have 40 individuals for curriculum support. It's $6 million budget. It's wonderful. It's great. They do a great job, right? Dr. Finnegan is a very good professional. She gets it. She's supporting the system. That's great, but I think it's expensive. And I think the best school system in the world, they not only have the best teachers, which we are now doing too with professional development and the quality of hires and quality of the teachers here, at least by my experience, but it's also giving them freedom to teach. Less directive from Leroy Avenue, wherever they say, more, give them teach, let them do it. So that's another, if I was sitting at Board of Education, I'll be looking at this 6 million saying, do we need right curriculum for Shakespeare English every year and pay $10,000 per each of them? Does physics really change? Newton's law change every year, that we need to write curriculum every year for that? I'm not sure, right? So anyway, and then there's third thing, which is transportation. I think this town has some place where we need to find a depot. It's $500,000 a year. It's not gonna make it or break it, but you know, every other town has a depot. We don't have a depot. I mean, I don't know if it's a discussion that's ongoing, but I think that's something we need to focus on as well. I'm sorry?
We have that discussion too.
Probably had discussion too. I'm bringing it back. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how to make this 5% instead of 7, right? For our taxpayers. So I'll stop.
Before we, does anyone want to speak about IDEA before we move on totally?
About
from
what?
IDEA. Before we move on totally from IDEA, let's close that chapter. Does anyone have more comments about IDEA?
Can I just ask a general question?
Yeah.
Just because I don't, I mean, I've followed this, but there was so much going, and I'm new to this. How does this compare to, I should know this, but last year's, what was the total increase for the last year or the last couple of years? What has been the increase year over year?
Well, last year, what was it? I mean, it was 3 or 4.
4.6. 4.6 was last year. Yeah.
Okay.
And when the Board of Education approved a budget, and then it went to the Board of Finance, which is the process,
Right.
and they
Yeah.
cut it by 2 million, and then it had to go back for
Okay.
more revisions, which is, I
Okay.
think, I was gonna jump in and say, that's why you're seeing, as Peter very, astutely pointed out, like this process we're nickel and diming right now, because last year it was the same process. They were given, the Board of Education was given, 3 or 4% guidance, and they went over, and then their budget was cut, and then it got, very painful, and I think that they're trying to avoid that, and that's why when you say, where is this, where does the idea come from? I think they're kind of just they're cutting into things I think they don't want to cut into, because they're trying.
There wasn't a whole menu and they said, let's choose this one. That's what I'm.
I don't know. I genuinely do not know.
Yeah.
But I
That's
know
what a
that,
budget is.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that I would guess that they would prefer not to make this cut.
I want to know, what are the things they highlighted when they looked at the budget to say, we have these
Was it
5,
long
let's go with IDEA. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just make sure we've covered everything about IDEA before we move on to the next thing.
Just one thing about Fitch, I think if the budget would be even greater if we didn't have Fitch.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been full this year, from what I can gather. I think they're budgeting, they're assuming that it will be full next year, but I was sort of surprised to hear that, or maybe that the other children didn't fit the model of Fitch, but I mean, I think that's an incredible. The idea, I don't remember who the person was who had the idea, but I mean, that did save an awful lot of children, not having to go outsourced, being outsourced.
Yeah.
Right, it's at 14 kids, right, but they expect to be in capacity this year, I think. They said close or just below.
Yeah.
It's maximum, but yeah, they have 24 maximum, right, it's
Yes,
only 14.
yes.
And you're right, it's efficient, it's 50,000 a year, relatively more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I have some thoughts. I copied here that the budget is particularly challenging. Driving it is fixed costs. There's nothing new about that at all. It's an embarrassment to me for the town that said. Fixed costs are always fixed costs. And then every year the health insurance goes up. There's been no specific reason given for why the IDEA program is on the cutting board. I've been involved with DAEG for a long time, certainly when I was involved as a parent, I was very active in it. There's nothing new about wanting to cut it, but it was never just it's like this, ever. And once again, what is the reason for cutting it? What have we been told? Except it's expensive.
And just to go one step further, what is the additional cost going to be, if any, for the training of teachers to have more flexibility in how they can teach in a classroom? Because there's cost connected with that as well.
I'm hoping they're going to detail all of that tomorrow. I mean, and if not, we can follow up with that specific question.
Somebody who spoke said such a good word about it. It's a very polite word for it made no sense at all. Absolutely. It wasn't, I wish I remembered the word.
Arbitrary?
No. Started with an M. But that they're going to come up with some kind of course. It's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. And once again, why it was picked. It's an embarrassment to the town. All those children and adults that came there and spoke about it. And then the younger ones that are there now, they won't. Oh, yeah, I was there for a while, but it got cut. It was too expensive. And that sort of ruins the whole point and the prestige of the program, and certainly all the stuff we heard about the house prices.
And I think also,
And buying here and coming for the gifted program, which
Yeah.
is part of special ed. So that was a big deal way back when I was involved. It was not in the special ed budget. That made it even more complicated to keep it.
but also I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I believe we will be the only town around here that does not have a gifted program.
They don't talk about it as much as we do.
No, but
But is it the same type of program?
the same type of program, yeah. I think we'll be the only town.
Okay.
If not, we'll be one of the very few towns that don't have that program. But I think that's something to look at.
Oh, yes, that was said in so many different ways, and it was just spectacular, all the people that were so articulate about the fathers that came and why they bought the houses and the children. I mean, we all watched it on TV.
The arguments have been equally articulate about starting earlier than almost everybody else as well.
Yes.
But it seems like a greater challenge than we're willing to take on right now.
Also, I think we're here in this committee to represent the values of the education budget and not have a lot of conversation about how much taxes people want to be increased or not increased, and speculating on that. Our job here, we can have an opinion when we're at the RTM meeting about voting for the budget because it's too high and my neighbors won't like it, but I think our focus is education.
We also don't know in terms of the total budget what the selectmen are going to come out with. So we shouldn't be saying that just this budget is going to cause all the taxes to go up.
Well, what's particularly challenging this year? That's what we've been told. The island is bought, obviously. Some people bring that up.
The what?
Great island.
Oh, yeah.
That's the headline you don't want to see. Darien buys island cuts gifted program.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it puts that percentage down.
And understates future costs significantly.
Yeah. So somebody asked me, this is another
Maybe she
issue.
wants to talk. You want to talk?
I was just gonna say that I have heard that part of why, and again, this is just what I've heard, I have heard that part of why the gifted program was looked at is that it isn't considered the same caliber that it was years ago. And they felt that it was sort of watered down a little bit over the past few years.
Who is they?
People that I know that have
I'm
kids
a
in the
they.
school system. And my daughter went through the gifted and talented program years ago, and I can't say enough about it, and I think it was one of the most valuable experiences that I had with the school system. But I have heard from people that have kids in the program now that the requirements to get in and the emphasis on outside the classroom learning is not the same that it was like 5 or 10 years ago. I don't know if that's the motivation. I'm interested to hear what they say tomorrow. It's just, people were saying, why is that being looked at? I don't know.
That's some people's opinion.
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree or disagree.
I sat with a friend of mine, my daughter's friend, that came to the meeting. She works full-time, and both her children at Henley are just like it a lot. And back in the day, parents weren't coming in and saying how much their children liked the program. It was taken for granted that they were glad they were there.
I think it's a great, I'm not knocking the program in
right.
any way. I think it's a great program. I don't think they should cut it.
Eating their lunch, that was a big production. Then
Yes,
parents
they had to have
complained
it,
that
yeah.
the idea kids are disturbing them who aren't in the gifted program while they're eating. Tough world.
Right, let's, I think it's clear everyone's in support of keeping the program, at least in, again, I'd like to see what the proposal is with the, the librarians, heading the teaching. I don't know how
Are
that
they
works.
even calling them librarians?
I'm probably using the wrong word, I apologize. What,
Technical.
oh gosh, yeah, so I'll look
Is
at
it like
it.
media coordinators?
Yeah, I'm using the wrong word, probably, I apologize.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
The Board of Education is going to go over the proposal to change the IDEA program. I think one of the proposals is to remove it and just, work on a classroom approach. And then there's another proposal that came out in the materials today. And again, I'm kind of loath to speak on it because all I've done is like review just the materials. I haven't, and they're going to speak about it tomorrow, but is to have I keep calling it the school librarian.
Media specialist?
Media specialist? Is that it?
I don't know.
Library media is the title.
Or like a.
What is it?
Is the title of it.
I think it might be media specialist. I might be calling it.
Either way, we all understand.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone.
I don't know if that's right either. That was just, I'm like.
I think there's one of the proposals that would still be a cost savings, but not quite as much, would be to move those kids, to remove the current teachers and have the librarian or the media specialist sort of teach those classes on like the other half of his or her day. Again, please let's wait and listen to the Board of Education talk about it tomorrow, because I'm not by any means an expert on this at all.
It says here the proposed budget accommodates input from each school librarian.
See, all right. You were right.
That's right.
Well,
Regarding circulation trends, current resources, this is a lot of.
I certainly hope that the program is maintained in some form. I would love to see it enriched and made even.
Expanded.
Yeah, I'd love to see the program expanded, not shrunk. I love the IDEA program, and I think they consider it enrichment now. I think that's what it's considered. It's enrichment. But I think it's just as important as any other kid that has special needs getting what they need in the classroom. But we'll see what happens. So.
Another comment is that they'd be surprised that Darien even had a gifted program because of equity issues. So we can just think about that. We're gifted frequently is controversial.
Okay. All right, I think we should touch on the proposed cut to the paraeducators at the elementary school.
I agree.
Why don't you start us off? I just would like to hear what people have to say about that.
I think this is just another thing that I'd like more information on, the rationale behind it. I found the way that it was, the paraprofessionals that I've had the privilege of knowing personally have a background in education, typically have been teachers in other states. I thought the way that it was discussed was a bit, I don't think it was anybody's intention perhaps, but it sounded a bit, I don't think it covered the full scope of what they contribute, both to the students in the classrooms. I'm also curious, there are a number of, I know from personal experience with my son, time with his paraprofessional is in his IEP. which is a legal document, so I'm curious in terms of how that's going to be addressed. Like, for example, my son's, just only using me as an example, because I'm not gonna go on hearsay, his IEP is through January of next year, so I would just assume a student intern would take over should they be hired. And again, I'm gonna keep an open mind. I'm curious to learn more.
I think, again,
Please, yeah.
that the proposed cuts to the paraeducators are for the non-special education
That's
assigned
what I'm
kids
saying.
Okay.
in grades K to 2, I think is the.
That was like,
I think,
Okay.
and I always,
They did say that.
yeah.
okay,
Because
so
I was
but-
surprised that they would be cutting something.
I was, yeah, and I guess that's to
That's my
the,
understanding, but I could be totally.
oh, no,
I've tried to follow it myself.
There's so much
Yeah.
information that I always feel
Yes.
really uncomfortable
No, but
saying.
please-
And I'm
This
a
is how it
teacher,
is.
so.
Yeah.
no, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I guess just clarity, rather than, I don't want to use anybody's example or hearsay outside of my own experience,
Totally.
but I guess more clarity on, I would assume something that's such a radical shift from what we've all grown accustomed to in the school would have thoughtfulness behind it. And I think just a little more about, okay, like, if you want to bring students in, I think that can be beautiful. On the flip side, with something they did for my son, they had a grad student with a PhD do some research, and it was great because he didn't know her as an educator. He, you know, they had wonderful insights not being totally steeped in the school for a bunch of years. So I'm not going to be black and white about it. I do want to remain open-minded about what they think, but I think similarly to IDEA, I would just like to know as the process goes along, which I assume being someone new to it is a part of it, that there's just more rationale behind it, kind of the thoughtfulness and how that would be mapped out and what that would look like. I'd just like to know more.
I mean, the only thing I've heard is the deviation from their responsibilities is an expensive model for substitution. What is the responsibilities that
That makes no
they're
sense.
deviating
That
from?
Well, and who's training them, who's in charge of student, I mean, as somebody who's managed student interns, it is a job, you know, so kind of who, yeah.
But is there do we have the information on the scope of their responsibilities that they're deviating?
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of information in the packet that went out today,
Yeah.
and they're going
Okay,
to
good.
discuss it in the meeting
Okay.
tomorrow. And, I actually wrote down some notes because I was looking at all of like how they were describing, the paraeducators are more expensive than the building substitutes, they're more expensive obviously than student interns.
Yeah.
And they were describing, you know, what each person would do in that building. And yes, those jobs are similar. But I think it would be, my opinion is that if we're swapping, you know, interns in place of paraeducators, we're sacrificing experience of those paraeducators. We're sacrificing the stability of having those folks in the building. And they are the established like relationships between, you know, the teachers, the other paraeducators, the therapists, the psychologists at the school, the administrators at the school. And if that's invaluable to teachers, if they have to speak to a 22-year-old intern rather than this seasoned, experienced paraeducator who knows everyone in the building, we're losing so much efficiency in terms of teaching. And I feel like, you know, that's helpful to teachers, but it's the students who are going to benefit from that efficiency.
I agree.
And they're going to, I feel like, and a lot of the kids in these K1, 2 kids who are getting it, they're the kids who are getting reteaching or these like sort of extension services because they aren't quite, you know, eligible for special education, but they need extra, they need more, you know. So I feel like when we're just kind of saying, well, it's much cheaper to have the interns or, you know, but yes, of course it is. I don't doubt that for a second.
Yeah.
But I think that if we need, you know, cheaper building substitutes, then let's talk about that or, you know, getting subs another way. But I think we really need to, you know, these folks are, I think, invaluable. In fact, that's the word, invaluable is the word that a teacher said to me the other day about the paras in these roles. So I think that is, I think it's really important that before the administration or the Board of Ed decides to cut those folks, that they really take into consideration the thoughts and feelings of all the teachers in the elementary schools before they make that decision.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on that.
And I think it speaks to Peter's point about like the quality of the teachers. That doesn't end with just the lead teacher in the classroom, right? You know, and I understand that it's not as simple as just, you know, they add so much, we love them. You know, you have to look at the holistic picture, but I agree with what you're saying. I think
You're losing
just
so much time and energy.
Headspace.
And you'd have to retrain each person.
Every
And
year.
also, it's assuming that you're gonna get those. I mean, I know,
Yeah.
we all have kids in the schools, or, you know, or friends with kids in the schools, and if you have, if you've ever talked to someone, they're always waiting to replace the art teacher, or they're waiting to replace
Yeah.
the school psychologist, or they
Yeah.
can't find another
Yeah.
teacher to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that the assumption that we're just gonna magically get these student interns, we're
Yeah.
gonna show up, be
Yeah.
there, and be prepared enough to replace.
Number, no.
I don't know.
These are all seniors in college, right?
I don't know.
See, that's just kind of what I need to know more.
See,
I
we
mean,
don't even know.
Yeah, I would like to
They
know.
were saying they had an education background, that was my understanding when they were
so,
talking
I mean, I
about
hope,
it.
yeah.
So I
It
thought they were
says,
more
wait, it
graduate
even says,
students.
it's,
If I can pull it up quickly,
Graduate
I'll tell you,
students.
because they did tell, it's in the stuff for tomorrow, so,
Yeah, I'll look through it.
yeah,
But I
But I
also,
don't know, I mean, I could be,
it's in the stuff for
but I
tomorrow.
think
know
even
how
if
much
they
they're
take the
paid.
paras, you know, like,
They
Okay.
they tell you, again, it's in all this materials,
Yeah.
my brain has like a max on what it can retain, I guess, these days, so I'll try and find it, and,
It's a
No.
lot of information.
it's
a
Yeah.
lot of information.
and I'm like, by April, I hope we do. No,
But-
but,
And just there's so many paraprofessional, this, there's like different, I was
But
getting confused
from being in
on-
the school, at the elementary schools, the paras do a lot outside of special education too. Like, I've just seen them doing, like, even walking a child to a parking lot, you know, like every single day. Like, to Liza's point, I think they just intuitively know the teachers that they're paired with, that they don't always stay with, but it's just that knowledge that comes through experience. I don't know any other way to say it, you know, and through having spent time in a classroom. And I do think it's valuable to have a student perspective, but I think invaluable, right?
I think that, again, I'm
Not to
spending-
belabor the point, but I just,
And this is
Yeah.
not stuff that we would expect 35 Leroy to know, right? They're not on the ground every day
Yeah.
observing like the teachers would be.
and I think asking the teachers is, like, that's the brilliant thing to go back to get the teacher feedback.
So the big
Yeah.
question is, with all the pushback on the proposed cuts, are they just going back to find new proposed cuts? Like, to the
Well,
point of, if there was
I
a
don't-
list of
yeah.
10 things and we
Yeah.
think the
Well,
first 3 are not good ideas.
One of the
What are
things
the
I'm
next?
for is they are proposing to add fees to, you know, extracurricular, sports, theater,
Okay.
music, clubs,
Yeah.
which, if you look at the DIRG, evidently, all the other schools are doing this, and there's a I think they're saying like, what, somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 they could generate in these fees. Fine, you know,
Yeah.
like, fine, I would much rather see them add on fees than cut
I think.
paraeducators or, you know, enrichment programs.
Mhm.
But
So maybe the right answer is to, you know, and I don't know, but maybe half of these paraprofessionals leave
Yeah.
it in and half students, you know, just to
Yeah.
maybe integrate and then maybe phase them out. I mean, it's hard because you're talking about human lives and their professional lives, but you know, we don't have unlimited resources. We have
No.
to find it somewhere
Mhm.
else,
No.
right?
Yeah.
you're right.
I don't disagree.
Now, what's interesting here, and there was a good question again by Ms. Lublin about this, like, not one administrator has been touched, right?
Mhm.
Dr. Adelaide built a great organization for long-term that, you know, he called it architecture, right? He's got the superintendents for special, he's got it set up properly. But it's an expensive system and we don't have growth in students, right? So you know, the question is, should we look at that too? I mean, these are big numbers. These folks are, you know, very good professionals, they're highly paid professionals, right?
One of the proposals for tomorrow is to cut, it would cut, but is to increase the class size for, I think it's third and fourth grade? I can't remember.
I think.
Second and third grade, from 23 to 24 kids, which would end up cutting like 2 full-time teachers at a couple schools. And I know, and I just, again, I think we'd all rather see an administrator go than a second grade teacher. These
Student facing,
and like if we're-
student facing should be protected,
if
sorry.
if we're talking about second and third grade, again, so we're gonna get rid of a teacher, and then next year, 5 kids are gonna move in, it's gonna be over again, and we're gonna have to try and find I mean, I think at some point, I don't know, the number of teachers, I think, is pretty steady. I don't know, I hate the idea of cutting teachers, especially at second and third grade.
This committee has been extremely consistent over the years on that message, that student-facing comes first.
Yeah.
And we all acknowledge this is an incredibly challenging process, right? There's so many moving parts. There is cost inflation, and, you know, roughly 2/3 of the budget is fixed, we can't touch it. Right, so those are contractual increases. That said, any person who's hired, teams before knows if you just pick a random number, if you build a new team of 20 people, you're not expecting all 20 to work out, and you're not assuming that 20 was the right number. So to Peter's point, that's something that should be looked at, right? This growth in administration, maybe it's all necessary. For example, I'm a huge supporter of the mental health additions that they've made over the years. I will stand to defend that. That said, it is something that should be reviewed, and I'm not certain to what extent it has. It may have been thoroughly reviewed. I just don't know.
To me, right, I said special education, I said curriculum, the whole bucket of 6 million, and the third thing is, what's the role of the school system, right? We had unfortunately tragedies in the school, but we now also have a 24/7, 365 support of something that's costly, right? And maybe we should say, that's fine, we want to have that cost, as you said, mental health, right? But what's the role of the school? What's the role? And if you look at it, we have, 22 psychologists, right? 16 psychologists, right? We have, there's a lot of people in here, and they're great professionals, but it's not sustainable as it's run. The community doesn't think, and you think we're advocating, Jen, you said, you are saying, we are here to advocate for the school system. I am, but the role that I view my role, it's not CDSP. I'm not here CDSP, I'm not here to protect my 2 kids. I'm here to figure out how we're going to have a fiscally sustainable system that we can say and recommend to the RTM to vote for, right? Also to the 60% of people who do not have the kids in the school system, as I said.
I think not having the kids in the school system is just
doesn't change anything.
wrong. It's an
Right.
insult to those of us who don't have the thing now.
You still have a stake, financial stake, and all that. I get it.
I think property value thing is
I get it.
I think it's why, it's one of the reasons
I
we
get it.
keep it here.
Values, but
I get it.
just being helpful, I was a substitute teacher, I've been there.
I get it.
I am here to help.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here to help and.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
don't have children in the schools.
I paid to send my kids to private school, and I'm here.
You're our best case.
I pay a lot of money.
In fairness to Peter, the historical data suggests that
Yeah.
as populations move away from school-age children, they tend to favor emergency services over schools.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we all grade
that's-
out, right? I mean,
Right, that's not surprising,
It's
but,
very similar to having an opinion on dog leashes, whether you
Sure.
have a dog or
Yeah.
not.
Exactly.
Exactly the same.
But what is it, 70% of our budget is school system, right? So 70% of your tax dollars supports the school system, right?
You either all pay and you improve the roads, or you put in a toll road and the people that use the road pay for it.
There you go.
And there was a lot of nodding heads there when you mentioned the idea of fees for different programs.
Yeah.
You've either got to cut money or you got to raise
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
And a lot of nodding heads saying, like, how much has that been examined though as part of this?
I don't know, we're gonna find out a lot more about it tomorrow, but one of the reasons, and this goes to anyone who doesn't have kids in the school, because I think at the end of the day, our property value is directly tied to how the school is producing. So no one's moving here for the
Yeah.
parks, they're moving here for the schools.
Exactly.
So whether or not you have kids in the school or not, you should care deeply about how the school's performing.
Exactly.
And I feel like,
wholeheartedly agree,
and
Leslie.
I think one of the reasons I'm personally okay with the fees is that when people are looking, okay, what's happening, you have to look at what the DERG is doing. And if Wilton and Ridgefield and New Canaan and Westport have gotten comfortable saying, okay, as a way to mitigate some of these costs, we're going to go ahead and apply these fees, I feel like, all right, I feel very comfortable
Yes.
in saying like, I want to be doing what the DERG is doing also. And I don't think that the fees are exorbitant either when I saw the proposal.
And philosophically to me, right, is if you use something, you pay for it. Right, that's like my view, right? My kids in in summer, they swim, they should pay for it, shouldn't be just, I mean, obviously, right, if you cannot afford it, and there is these systems even for, in the school, right? You raise your hand and you say, listen, I just need help, it's happening, but yeah, I'm for these fees, and I think Board of Education has done some good stuff with 25,000 a year, they have in these nice little advertisements, I mean, they're trying to figure out how to do these, right? It's, I don't think it's gonna change it or anything, but.
So the topic of fees for athletics has been historically the biggest one. It's been a controversial topic. The idea of naming rights, for example, for the stadium came up. You could bring a lot of money in that way. We could keep the gifted and talented program. Keep Paras and we would have a local corporation put their name on the football field. Just like they've done with high school names in the area. So
But all these people paying to send their kids to Eclipse and every private club, all these clubs to play lacrosse all year long.
Oh, I
You're
know.
telling me they can afford, if they're paying that much money to send their kid to lacrosse
For extracurriculars,
all year
I
long, you
agree.
can surely pay if your child, and by the way, one of the things they brought up was all these teams that don't cut. So maybe by having some fees, people would say, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't really want to pay for my kid because he's really not going to get any playing time. So maybe that becomes, you know, people.
The proposed fee for athletics is $100. If your kid plays house basketball at the Y, it's $300.
Exactly.
You know, so I don't think
Exactly.
that
I just
they're.
think it's such a small,
you know,
like, it's
yeah.
like, go ahead, just
Yeah.
do it. I
It's
mean, why
not, it's not out of line. In fact, I think it's, and in the DIRG,
It
like
could
they
be
show-
argued that it's quite low.
it could be argued that it's quite low. In fact, Ridgefield's
It
charging,
is
I think,
low.
200 per child per sport. I think that also the fees for the non-SCX sports is like $340 per athlete. Proposed, none of this, they're gonna talk about it tomorrow. I'm getting ahead of us. But we're only meeting, you know, once every so often, so it helps to, even
Well, it's
if
good
the
that we have
timing
this
isn't.
on our minds, right?
Yeah.
We're aware of these issues.
Shows the
But
validity.
But I
I guess
think
the
back
point
to your
everyone's
point about
making.
examining, you know, all of these administrative positions, because I do think that needs to be, like, that needs to be looked at, because, I mean, do you really need all of these? I mean, I know this is very draconian, but you have 5 elementary schools, do you really need 5 principals? Aren't they all doing the same curriculum? Why can't you just roll? Do you need one for each? Do you need one for Tokenie Boyle? I mean, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out, I know that's
I would
draconian.
argue
Yeah, you
very
should.
strongly that we do need an on-site leader.
Well,
But
I'm
the
saying,
point where I think we're all agreeing is let's
things have changed,
think
so.
outside the box a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's
I
just
know,
not come up with targets.
I'm
and go
being
after them.
facetious when I say that, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I do think things need to be examined in a different, like, things have changed, so examine it in a different.
And I guess
some
the
of these
point I would add
administrative
to the point we're all making about various positions, the architecture that you mentioned, Peter.
Yeah.
I am personally in support of that. I'm a huge supporter of our superintendent.
Yeah.
But again, just having hire and build teams, just law of large numbers, they're not all right. Right? And you thought you needed 16, but you actually only needed 12. You just
Yeah.
never know until
Right,
after
until
the
it gets
fact.
going.
So it's worth reviewing.
And I think,
Oh,
I mean, that is a topic that I think has been being brought up for a number of years. The number of administrators we have in the
Yeah,
school.
that's
Yeah.
old, yeah.
Pardon?
Yes, it's always
Age
brought
old.
up, oh,
It's
yeah.
always
but-
brought up, but.
Yeah, we're just repeating.
Yeah.
But is examining, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean like, let's look for somebody else to cut. Like, I think I would welcome it, right? It's like with a curious spirit, and that may be because I'm green and new to it, but it's like, and it doesn't have to be that thorough through every single thing, but this to me is something just, even as like a mom in the school district, I would like to know more about, you know, and
Much
to,
harder to penetrate though.
yeah. Oh, I imagine, yeah.
So, speaking of costs, some of what was said about getting rid of the parents is they cover for substitutes.
Yes.
And the language that was used is, which is higher than normal expenditure. We don't know what a para is paid versus, we're talking about fees, you had some ideas about fees, right?
Yeah, let me try
I've
and
got
tell
it.
you. You got-
Whereas,
Let me find it, I was just looking at it.
We still gotta pay for the substitutes then.
Yeah,
But is the difference
we
that
don't know
paras,
what the prices are.
But
but is the
they
difference
have
that paras are FTEs with benefits?
Yeah,
and
that's
substitutes are
exactly
not?
it, because that makes a big difference.
But there's,
Health
I've
benefits.
subbed as a para when they can do both.
But have they added in the cost of?
Be a teacher,
I
teacher,
know,
as
I
well
know.
as a para.
No, you're not. I can't
Not,
just put my fingers
that wasn't here. But in Stanford, certainly.
I'm
But
trying to.
have
be-
they added back in the cost of the substitution?
I don't know, it's very
Price is going up
confusing.
because
That-
Okay,
it's all
there we go.
professionals
There we
do
go.
that.
Exactly.
It was presented that you can, what is a, it's higher than normal expenditure to have the parents cover for the teachers and for the,
I don't know the answer, but I would bet
Sorry.
they have. The-
Yeah.
You know, the director of finance
I just
is
saw it.
excellent.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he
That's
doesn't want to
the-
get
that's the
caught
net-
up at the end
that's
of
the
the
net
year
number.
and say, the
Yeah.
net number is 1.1 million savings doing it. You know,
Oh, there's-
I'm not sure it touches the what do you call them, the substitutes, but
Right.
the savings, interns versus paraprofessionals is 1.1 million. It's a meaningful number,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
you know.
This is, I just want to ask this earlier, what do other DIRG districts have for idea? And it says that for elementary, everyone has it except for Wilton and Ridgefield. So Westport New Canaan, Weston, Easton, Reading all have
Okay.
elementary idea. And in the middle school, Westport, New Canaan, and Weston have it, but not Wilton, Ridgefield, or Easton Reading, so. Sorry,
know.
someone asked me that like an hour ago.
No, that's good to know.
Maybe in an hour I'll know what the cost breakdown
Okay.
is between the paras and the
Um,
interns, but.
They have the salary and benefits, I've got it.
I'm really surprised
You
because
want-
Ridgefield's a high achieving, I don't know about Wilton all this, but Ridgefield's a high achieving.
Yes.
And if you look at these stats, they're always like the, you know, the SAT graph,
Yes.
spending, they're very, very efficient and,
Yeah.
you know, high achieving. I'm
It's an
surprised they
excellent
don't
school
have idea.
district, for sure.
So the salary between, okay, I have it. if you want.
Okay, let's see,
Yeah.
this is, oh, thank you. Okay, this is para, intern, and substitute comparison.
And a daily substitute.
Okay, yeah, the instructional paras, the salary and benefits for the year is 83,930. The building substitute looks like it's 31,500, so huge difference, and the intern is only 17,500.
It's hard to,
And a daily substitute is 125 a day. So it's a
How
huge,
about a parent?
it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So it's math-
125 a day.
I can't believe that. 125 a day wasn't that much when I used to sub.
oh, it was 80 when I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
So-
80.
Oh, yeah, it's hard work.
They've just jacked it up a
But they
lot.
can't get
They've had to,
people
but
to-
they
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
love
Our,
it.
what I'm talking about is that's
Oh,
not a lot
yeah.
of money for an entire.
But-
Right, yeah,
Right.
it's a huge difference.
But when the
Yeah.
parents
Yeah, I
come in
subbed
and
in a private
sub,
school
is
and I
that
didn't
like,
pay that
addition,
much.
I guess that's what I need.
I subbed at my
If I
kid's
missed
school.
it, maybe, but I'm curious, when the pairs are
They're
pulled
lucky to
in,
have you.
since they're salaried, is that,
2 master's degrees?
yeah, I mean, I guess it's still a lot, even if you hired full-time building substitutes or interns, but,
Well, I think we have a lot to pay attention to
Yes.
tomorrow.
I was gonna
There
say,
you
my
go.
big picture question is, has all of what we're discussing right now gotten back to the superintendent
So-
already?
Surely.
We're, so we're
They're
going,
listening to us now.
no,
They're
but
outside the door.
I am going to prepare something that's written that expresses our feelings about what we've seen so far here. And if anyone would like to send me like any specific thoughts or language, I would, I would love to hear it. I think I've got a good sense of what we've discussed, tonight. If there's more people want to discuss, let's do that. And then I will send out whatever I prepare to everyone, and you can give me feedback on that and say, more of this, less of that, and then I think the Board of Ed and the administration want feedback by this Friday, so I'll.
Well, Johnson,
Yeah,
thoughts down.
yeah, that'd be great. I mean, is there anything else we should talk about? I know it's getting late, it's lengthy, it's.
Just
it's
one
been-
question
yeah.
that you sent out today about the change in the reimbursement rate.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Oh,
So, yes, the ECR, which is the excess cost reimbursement, so I think, Peter, what did you say it is, like 122, it's 4.5 times the price per pupil.
But the reimbursement rate went down
It went down, so
from
like,
70 to 65.
yeah, yes, and I'm gonna make this a really dumb explanation, but evidently, like, all the districts, you get a reimbursement from the state, and Jan, I know you can explain this better than I can because you were on the board, but they give you money if for those students that have very high costs, so it's anything in excess of like 4.5 times cost per pupil. And every year, there's, more demand for those state funds than there is the actual pool of state funds. And so we've been getting, our estimated was, I think, what did we estimate, 70% on the
Yes.
budget? And I think the state came back with 59%. So it's a big reduction. I think they have to look to come up with like $166,000 on top of, so all the cuts we've been discussing don't even include this new hit to the budget of $166,000. I think that, again, I'm approximating, but, so that's bad, very bad news. And Jan, if you want to explain it better than I did, please do.
No,
Did you find
I guess that covered it.
I
agree. What do you mean?
remember that far back.
Yeah, so I'm sure that will be discussed again, tomorrow at the meeting. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is, and I know this is, I'm just adding fuel to the fire here, but listen, I was so disappointed that the special education transition program for an all-in cost of $288,000, I think was not included in the budget this year, and was, I was really excited about it when the administration proposed it and had talked about it, I think was it last month? And I only bring it up because I just want to highlight it as something that I think is important to the community generally, and I would love to see it in a future budget, and if, I think it's a great idea. I just wanted to
Tell me
put that
what
on the
it is,
record.
Victoria.
I agree.
It's a program, it's like for kids that do receive special services, and again, I'm not the expert on this, but it's a program for kids like as they graduate and transition into like jobs, and I think maybe even like a potential higher education role, but it's for those kids that still need support and are between 18, exactly. And they talked about it, again, I think it was last month, they had a meeting and Dr. Edley talked about it, and I just thought it was amazing. Sounded really great. I'd love to hear more about it. I'd love to see it in a budget, and it's $288,000. I don't think we're not talking about, what did we hear about the cost to start early, which I also love, or the pushback is like $1 million.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that I understand is a huge kick to the budget.
Yeah.
I'd still love to see that too, but this seems like a low-cost initiative, and in the grand scheme of things, could do a world of good for a lot of people. But,
I also think in a town like this, it would encourage, like, if I had a local business and knew about this program, I think this is a type of town that would embrace that wholeheartedly, and so
Yeah.
I think it could extend beyond just its, to me, very credible standalone value. I agree. I'm with you. I think even if it's not this year, in the future, I would be over the moon.
Yeah.
It is in the future, they put it in 2020, 2027.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, we'll
I
see.
know, I know.
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. But I like, anyway, that's my 2 cents, but if there's anything we should talk about before we wrap up, please
Well,
tell me.
I'd like to go off on it. Somebody asked me, and I had no idea, in the athletics budget, it's talking about new uniforms, and she was wondering what a football uniform costs, how often we replace them, who makes those decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And I know it's a big expense. If you look at it, I don't know whether anybody, I think that frequently we spend a lot more time looking at cuts in the academic programs than we do in costs, and I'm not suggesting cut football, but I'm wondering whether or not.
I put that in our notes.
No, but what I am asking is, are these kinds of considerations something that the athletic department does on any kind of a regular basis? Because if you look at the cost of uniforms, I don't remember what it is, I wrote it down.
He did bring it up about trying to make the life of the uniform longer. Remember we were talking
And they're
about
proposed
that.
in the note, again, the notes for tomorrow, I think there's a note that says they want to extend the
To 5
replacement cycle
years.
from 4 to 5 years.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
want
so
to,
he,
yeah.
because that was, some feedback.
I didn't look
And they
at
were
it.
on what am I trying to say, a staggered basis, so that they replace some, and
Yeah,
then
okay, good.
stagger the replacements. I'm just saying, because I heard the guy say that, that's the only reason I know. He was talking about that.
And just out of curiosity, because again, this is controversial, well, we are a public school, and we have certain policies regarding anyone who wants to join the team to be on the team, whether they play or not. What is the DIRG on cuts to athletic teams?
Oh, God, I don't know,
Okay.
there's like a huge deep dive on this where they talk about all of that, and I think I don't know, it's gone in one ear, not the other. There's an answer to that, and I don't have
Today
it.
is the discretion of the coach.
Each team.
Each
Yeah,
That's our,
That's our policy.
that's our,
That's
yeah.
And what has that discretion led to?
But I don't know if the DIRG is, I
Who
only know
doesn't?
that's ours.
Yes, I don't know how they make that decision. I'm kind of curious, because like football, they said football, like everybody, there's no
Wants to
cuts,
play.
at least freshman year, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're saying they should get a certain number because there's a cost for each student for uniforms and everything else?
Well, not just uniforms, it's everything.
It's transportation, they're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
transportation.
And I'm
like
not suggesting that I'm just curious about,
The
again,
process.
what do our peer schools do?
I don't know, and but I think it's been discussed, I think.
Many
it was
times.
like- Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
if that means more coaches, the
Yeah.
transportation costs go up, the uniforms, I mean, you think about.
And it's a philosophical choice as well.
It's a lot.
As a public school,
Yeah.
should kids be able to play if they want to play with
Right,
this?
Exactly,
and somebody brought up
exactly.
a point,
Yeah.
you bring the third string quarterback to the game, that now you need a third bus or a second bus that you're paying for, so.
Respect to the fees too, man. My daughter does gymnastics at the Y, and they want to get a new leotard for every event, and it's like $300.
Yep.
And
Oh my
you're
gosh,
insane,
yeah.
right? And it's not lasting for 4 or 5 years. It's lasting for 3 hours.
What is it that they want to get in?
The leotard.
Leotard, yeah, for
Yeah,
gymnastics.
my daughter does dance, it's the same, like, how much?
Oh, yeah.
And they're never gonna wear it again, it goes back and they keep it for next year. So you have to pay for it like it's yours, but you never see it again.
That's great.
Okay.
Let's not do that policy.
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
It is,
Rent the runway.
Yeah, there you go.
Possible that we
it is a
could-
public school talking on sports. I know this town spends a lot of time on sports, right? We've been talking about it maybe way too much, but just my comment is 80% of kids do play sports
Yeah.
here. And I think that's very healthy,
I
it's
agree.
community.
Yeah.
And I understand, but, I think these kids get it. If you don't, if you're the 25th best tennis player, maybe you play tennis somewhere else. And I think the kids get it. I think it's okay. I don't know many people who would be complaining they didn't make the team and this changed their social life. I think rationality wins at some point,
Yeah.
right?
If you're talking about cutting education in the classroom, and an option is talking about fees for sports, that has to be on the table.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, isn't it appropriate that we bring up the possibility of increasing fees to play sports?
Please.
Yeah.
It seems so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with it.
The silence surrounding it is postpone.
You know, I feel like a broken record, but they're talking about it tomorrow.
Are they?
So,
Well,
I'm-
good.
Yeah.
They should be.
Yeah, they
because-
are. It's tricky, so,
And I'm very pleased that they are.
yeah.
The question is $100 increase? Is that gonna cover as much as it could?
Is that our decision?
No.
And
Yeah.
who's saying,
It is.
who's saying, I can't afford that? There's not gonna be anybody, I don't think.
Well, to Karen's point, I think if we're talking about high school sports, if you're playing a high school sport, you're also playing for
Yep.
another team in your off season, and that's very
Getting a
costly.
personal trainer. or
Yeah,
something.
I think $100 is I think it's a reasonable amount.
Mhm.
But again, they're gonna get into it tomorrow, but,
For what it's worth, we got a suggested donation request for basketball, for high school basketball,
yeah.
for fees. So I don't know
Same
where that
with
goes. I
music.
just-
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, and then that's, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, is this for the varsity team?
No, freshman.
It's, yeah, and
Oh,
they,
really?
I just wanna say, it's in the budget already. $64,000 is new participation fees being paid, right? So maybe they wanna extend it to more, but
Yeah.
maybe, in fact, I think it's brought back because some board members think they don't wanna do it.
well, I think now they
Right?
do,
Yeah.
they definitely get fees for like, again, God, I wish it's like swim, hockey, squash, cause like those aren't, We don't
Yes, yes,
necessarily-
they're using their facilities, but this
Yeah.
is new participation
Yeah.
fees, $64,000, so
okay.
it's already in the budget, so if
Yeah.
it's taken out, that's.
I mean, but they're talking
Yeah.
about
So
generating
that'll
like, in the like $300,000.
Okay.
64,000 doesn't sound very.
Yeah, no, I think
got
that
it.
they're
I got
talking
it.
about much more than that.
Yeah.
Again, tomorrow.
Mhm.
Who's representing not paying fees?
I haven't heard anyone complain about it yet,
Great
but,
question,
but I
yeah.
think we'll find out tomorrow. I think
Yeah.
they-
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're right.
And I'm assuming they will institute a place where if a family cannot afford the fees. they'll-
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sure,
Exactly.
I'm
Sure.
sure,
It's
I'm
very
sure.
common place in
Yeah.
the high school at least.
Before we wrap up here, I just want to point out that, again, there's a meeting tomorrow at 7:30, and then this week, we're gonna gather our information, submit it to the administration and the board. February 4th, there's a public hearing, and this is all on the slide of the
When is the
superintendent's.
public hearing in your?
February 4th.
Okay.
February 11th, that's when they're gonna vote to approve their budget. March 4th is the Board of Finance review. March 11th is the Board of Finance public hearing. April 3rd, the Board of Finance votes, and our team will vote, we will vote May 12th. And there's a lot of meetings in between there, I just wanted to like remind everyone,
Yes, thank
that's
you.
what we're working with in terms of timing. And that, and then if there's anything else, any other business we wanna discuss before.
I
Yeah,
want to touch upon this,
Yep.
on the timing here.
yeah,
These people are, volunteers, right? They don't get paid for it, it's wonderful, they spend so many hours.
Who are we
Agreed.
talking about?
All of them, Board of Education,
Yeah.
all that, it's wonderful. But do we have an in-person meeting with either Board of Ed or not? I know we submit
Yeah.
questions, they answer in a nice package, it's wonderful, but I think it's valuable if we see them eye to eye.
I'm more than happy to ask for that.
And I know they changed the system somehow because they don't want too many meetings.
I think that they're looking for very high-level feedback.
Yeah.
And it kind of what Janet was describing, which is I think they want to hear
like what our thoughts are about these programs, like what our thoughts are generally about the budget. And I think that if we request a meeting, we will get one. I think that, you know, right now, I feel as though their request was not for in-person discussion, their request was for written feedback.
And the recording of this session is actually quite helpful for them.
Yes.
They'll hear everything.
That's true, that's true.
They have
So,
so much to listen to and so much work to do, you know, but
It is a lot of work.
I think,
Yeah.
I think also once the budget, I mean, I can also just say that before we vote as a committee, we want to, you know, have a meeting. Once it becomes the Board of Education budget that they're voting on, maybe that makes more sense, or not. I mean, what do you think?
I agree.
Board of
Yeah,
Finance,
I do
yeah,
too.
maybe even Board of Finance budget, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I'll speak to Jill, I'll ask her, like, if we can have, you know.
Later in the
Yeah, like,
process,
like
it's
once-
much more efficient, but
Yeah.
at some point it's
And-
worth it maybe.
Yeah,
And
I,
a
yeah.
joint session with other
Sure,
committees.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
With
Maybe with-
Jack's
yeah,
committee, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
that would probably be
Actually,
efficient for
Board of Finance would be
everybody.
helpful.
Yeah, so, okay.
Fine.
Thank you, that's, and by the way, thank you to everyone, this was, I think, really productive, so.
And allow me to just say, after several years on this committee,
Yes, please.
I'm so pleased with this group. This is a very plugged-in, interested, vested group. I'm just really excited to be a part of it.
No pressure.
What a lovely way to end it.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yes, I think you're doing a great job.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you
I
are.
feel like it was
You
the
are.
best.
No,
It's on film.
Okay, okay, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All right, we got Curtis and Jen, and all in favor?
fine.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you,
Meeting
Liza.
adjourned.
Jan.